Hello. Just wanted to pop on today and talk a little bit about how I stay sober and how it's kind of changed, because it's just a question that came up in our community recently, and I sort of likened it a little bit to NCT. You know, like if you've ever been pregnant and then had a baby, you might have joined NCT, and in NCT you're put with people who are really around your due date. So even if someone's got due date is like 2 weeks ahead, you won't be put in that group, because literally everything is changing so quickly that you need bespoke and time appropriate, stage appropriate support. And it got me thinking about the early days of sobriety and how true that was. And so where am I? I'm in my 9th year, so I'll be 9 years sober, continuous sobriety in a few months. And I was thinking about what helped me get sober and sort of manage that very early bit of habit change, and I have to say it was a lot about the kind of mental. It really shifted. So at the beginning it was a very much that almost like myopic kind of focus on my daily routine, checking in with the sober group. That was key. It was Soberistas. It's before the internet, and it's not before the internet, it's before Instagram and things like that and all the other online communities. That was the first one. So always big shout out to Lucy Rocker, thank God for you. What helped me get through those early days was this really, really simple kind of routine of getting through the trigger time of 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, to when I'd put the kids to bed, and then it was like my time, and I'd log on immediately to Soberistas. I might be chatting in amongst those if there was any moments. Decaf Earl Grey. I got the sugar cravings, so I had Cadbury's Options hot chocolate with squirty cream, because I realised I was sort of eating my body weight in Haribo for a bit. So I wasn't going to be happy with that. So that really helped, because that filled me up. So that's like a really first tip, is if you're getting the sugar cravings, then Cadbury's Option hot chocolate with squirty cream comes in about 100 calories. And for a short-term solution, I say short-term, I had one of them the other day when I got home from my dog walk. It looked very nice. So things like that. Box sets were an absolute godsend. I couldn't really get out at the time because I was childcare for our 2 children, and they were little at the time. They were like 3 and 5, 3 and 6. The online space was an absolute godsend. So I would log on, and I still think that kind of the connection. As Johann Hari says, connection is the opposite of addiction, and that is absolutely key. That accountability, when we say we're going to do something to others, we're much more likely to do it. We hear ourselves say it, we witness it, they witness it, you matter, they matter. There's a lot of that social juice that's very, very important. I didn't know all this at the time. I was just like faffing about and trying to get through white knuckle each day. It was just like really absorbing everything I could as well about, reading Quit Lit. I had to develop an absolute obsession with sobriety, because alcohol had become so entrenched in my life. It was like bindweed. It had got his bindweed all the way around everything for me. And it was like, if I was happy, then it would trigger a drinking thought. If I was sad, it would trigger a drinking thought. If I felt anxious, it would trigger a drinking thought. It got to that stage. I wouldn't always act on it, but it was like the mental kind of impulse was very, very strong. So yeah, so that's how I sort of started. And then I got really into self-care. Some of you who might have listened to Love Sober podcast, or may have read my blogs or my books, Love Your Sober Year and Love Yourself Sober, which I co-wrote with Mandy Manners. You'll probably know that I found the key to making it stick and feeling better, and maintaining my sobriety was I found in self-care. And it wasn't just, I feel quite cross when I see self-care getting a bad rap and people go, bubble bath. It's like, no, let's just go a bit deeper than that. Like, we've all got beyond that, haven't we? And for me, it was never about that. Self-care was like asking, what do I need, and meeting my needs. So nowadays, so then that led me to, okay, what is self-care? How do I ask what I need? How do I listen in? Got very interested in the science of happiness, so you could check that out. It's the Greater Good Science Centre, and it was almost like that really piqued my interest, because I was very interested in not what I didn't realise at the time, but it was basically coming from a kind of trauma-informed place. I didn't know, this is before we were all talking about trauma again, but looking at what was right with us, looking at our moments of agency, looking at things that lit us up, so glimmers and anchors. I'm not sure if you can hear this, it's getting really loud now. I'm walking across the meadow, and it's feeling a bit Wuthering Heights actually. Very windy. So the science of happiness, looking at gratitude, looking at awe. I got very interested in the nervous system, which, interestingly, what I really, really love in my sober journey, what I feel like something that sobriety has given me, is it sort of expands. So it's not like this narrow thing that I think when people are still drinking, they think that sobriety will be really boring and narrow, and this is all it is. There's a lovely coach I know through She Recovers, and she does a lot of dance. She's a dance instructor called Peyton Kennedy, who her handle is Expand Beyond Recovery. And that's exactly what it is. It's just this huge, expansive kind of thing that opens up. And so for me, I got very interested in let's dive down a subject and then see the links with sobriety. And I found it in yoga. I found all the kind of somatic, nervous system regulation, how we increase the space in the nervous system, the capacity, so then we're not, we won't experience triggers so quickly. We won't be triggered out of our window of tolerance, and therefore when we're not doing that, we're less likely to be triggered to then our brain goes towards that addictive behaviour. So I was very interested in that. I was interested in neurodivergence when my kids were diagnosed, and then I was diagnosed with ADHD. And so I went on a deep dive down that. I was like, okay, there's all these links there between neurodiversity and, sensory overwhelm, nervous system, blah, 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 blah. So all of these kind of topics opened up. So, and I think that's another thing that, so if you're getting to that point where you're like, okay, I've got a few maybe weeks under my belt, I remember about 12 weeks in, I experienced it, I called a flat line, and I got very worried because I was like, oh God, it's all just got a bit flat. Now, I didn't realise that is called hedonic adaptation, where we kind of return to a baseline of some kind, and then that's the point where we want to add something in. So, if you kind of experience that for yourself, don't be dispirited or disheartened. Think about something you might add in. Maybe it's a new hobby, maybe it's a challenge of some kind. Maybe it's, I don't know, whatever you fancy. The world's your oyster. Say no to alcohol, say yes to everything else. So there was that. And so what's kept me going, I guess, the last few years is I don't know, realising, just having this kind of unwavering sense that you get enough time behind you and you get enough evidence that you're like, this is so much better, why would I ever do that, right? You do, that just happens. And really, the benefits, like, so for example, I've mentioned yoga, haven't I? So when I realised there was all this kind of synergy and coherence between yoga, it just makes me feel really, really good. It regulates my nervous system. I am co-regulating with others, and it just makes you feel good. So that was one. It's like, that's how I've stayed, is to find some kind of movement, and this could be different for everyone, some kind of movement that really helps you to evacuate the stress out of your body, and not just to literally, evacuate the stress, but actually build capacity in your nervous system. So you might do some running, but also those kind of the breathing. So I'm walking through this mud at the moment. I'm gonna fall over. So yeah, all of that, regulating the nervous system. The other thing is, and I'm coincidentally, I am doing this while I'm walking out in nature. I'll give you a little look round. So I realised that, and this was quite by accident, because I inherited a dog, a big dog, who needed walking every day in a way that my little one didn't. So it's brought me out to the woods, and I realised that actually what I was doing was metabolising my life when I was walking in the woods. And maybe I would listen to music. I was got to get my headphones on. I would think, when times, if we had quite a few really difficult years in our family, and I would come and I would sometimes, cry out here, and I would record voice notes, and then I would go to therapy, because sobriety isn't a magic bullet, when life still throws stuff at us, so it came to the point where I needed therapy. But I think part of the other thing is that all the money that I wasn't spending on alcohol, that I would have thought, well, I can't afford therapy, I could afford therapy, so you can start to get those bits in around you that you authentically need. And then there's the other stuff that really opens up as well. And I want to kind of encourage people that, early days, it's not always just that feeling of rinse and repeat and getting through the day and that muscle power. It gets a lot easier, and then it gets even easier. And then it's probably about remembering. That's why our sober communities are so important. We've got to keep up the good work that we're doing, the things that are keeping us well, and we need to practice them. So there's an element of mindfulness there. There's an element of being present in your life, and how do you do that? And so, I'm a real fan of reflective practice. I think it's a very, what should I say? How can I say? It's an essential part of the process. When we decide we're going to do something and we set out our intentions, and we're like, okay, this is what I want, this is what I'm going to go for, this is going to make my life better, this is how I'm going to look after myself better. And then there is so much information when we do reflective practice, like journaling, writing down how the day went, what our triggers were. However we do it, it's essentially collecting data so we can see patterns and we can make smart choices. So that was another, that's another thing of this, being able to process and metabolize our lives, because lives are impactful. And then the other part of that, I guess, if we're looking at, this now calls to mind Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And obviously, we've got to make sure that the bills are paid, that we can eat, that we've got homes, that all of that. And hopefully with that also taking place, our relationships are more solid, we're more solid with ourselves, our relationship with ourselves. And as we go up, there's this kind of, he calls it the self-actualization process, and for me, I definitely resonate with that. It was like there's a coherence. So I trained as a coach. I've always wanted to write a book. I wrote 2 books. The podcast, I think, if you're interested, we've got 250 episodes, right back from the kind of quite early days of talking about parenting and mental health and alcohol and stuff, all the way through to lots of guest interviews. That still remains such a great resource, even though I don't get much time to record them as frequently, due to my parenting commitments, I guess, at the moment. So there was this coherence to my life of, okay, I ended up getting to do a job that was really aligned with my core values, which gives me such a deep sense of well-being and my why, if you like. So these are just some of the things I wanted to share today when I was talking about sobriety, because there are different stages to it. So if you're in the very early stages and you hear someone going on about how they're out and they've done a podcast, it can feel quite overwhelming. There's this tree really creaking there. It feels like I'm a bit worried it might blow over on me. That'll be the end of the recording today. Eek! So remembering just to be at that stage, endless compassion, endless compassion and patience for ourselves. And just day by day by day. And then, like I said, things to look out for. Maybe if we're feeling a bit bored or there's a bit of a flat line, okay, so maybe we're wanting to push our comfort zone a little bit. Maybe we decide that we've decided we're not going to, it's too much to go out socialising for a bit, we're just going to avoid that. And then maybe it's time to try it, get your 3 drinks, alcohol-free drinks, like listed, get your wing woman with you, tell someone, make yourself accountable, check in with your sober group, and go out to the party, be curious, have some fun. So it's just gently, right? It all takes a while. I think about myself as well. Like if I was, if my soberversary, if my 9th soberversary is coming up, if continuous sobriety, I'm still in primary school, right? So there's a hell of a lot to learn. There's a hell of a lot to experience and to breathe into at exactly the right time for us, as we tread through this life of ours. So that's it. That's what I wanted to share today. So I hope that has been helpful, whatever stage of sobriety you're at, and just knowing that you can reach out. There's lots of places online, loads of different communities. I've got Love Sober community, so if you go to lovesober.com, you can find all the coaching that I do, the courses, the community there, the books are there. So lots to kind of have a little look at there. But it's finding your fit. So if we're not your fit, there's loads of communities. If you're a writer, you can head over to Soberistas. That's still a written format rather than the meetings online that we do. And Substack's a good place. There's more and more recovery and sobriety posts on there. So Substack, you can find a lot of free stuff. What else is there? There's still Club Soda. There's We Are the Luckiest. Oh, She Recovers is an amazing global community. So their stuff is all free. So all the best to everyone. All the best. Keep going. The best is yet to come.